Königsee's mirror-clear waters reveal visibility beyond 30 meters, making it one of the clearest alpine lakes on Earth. Do you know the Brocken in Harz National Park can conjure the Brocken specter, where a lone hiker's shadow, ringed by light, appears gigantic on the cloud sea below? High above the Swabian Alps, Hohenzollern Castle crowns a solitary peak that sometimes rises like an island from a rare sea of fog, known locally as the Nebelmeer. Do you know that the Nebelmeer, the sea of fog that drifts through the Swabian Jura, can swallow entire valleys and leave only the castle's turrets piercing the clouds? This phantom appearance helped turn Hohenzollern into a symbol of myth as well as monarchy, a fortress seen in postcards and legends alike. Perched 855 meters above sea level, the castle you see today is the third incarnation, rebuilt in the mid-19th century under King Friedrich Wilhelm IV of Prussia. Its neo-Gothic silhouette, with pointed spires and battlements, is actually a romantic reconstruction designed to honor the Hohenzollern dynasty rather than a faithful medieval relic. Inside, chapels and halls hold artifacts and funerary memorials that trace the family's rise from regional princes to emperors, linking this hill to the sweeping history of Europe. Walk the stone terraces and the view pushes outward. The Black Forest to the west, the Neckar Valley leading toward Tübingen, and in clear weather, the Alps on the horizon. Despite its fairy tale charm, the castle's position was fiercely strategic. Signal fires and watchmen once guarded routes that merchants and armies still used. Today, those same routes lead visitors from Stuttgart's museums and industrial history into the quieter, medieval streets of towns that supplied soldiers and statesmen to the Hohenzollerns. Every stone seems chosen to prompt conversation, from the carved lions guarding the gate to inscriptions that survive centuries of weather and war. Guides tell stories of sieges, pilgrimages, and the slow transformation from military stronghold to a curated monument where restoration itself becomes part of the narrative. A visit to Hohenzollern often turns into a thread that ties natural spectacle, the Nebelmeer, to human ambition, architecture, and the quieter villages below. Leave the ramparts and you can follow country lanes into oak forests and vineyards where nearby castles and ruins continue the dialogue between landscape and legacy. In short, Hohenzollern is less an isolated picture and more a living chapter that connects Germany's geological quirks, regional cultures, and imperial histories in one high, wind-swept place. There is a reason artists, historians, and travelers keep returning. Each visit peels back another layer of story, until even the fog feels like a page being turned. At 2,962 meters, Zugspitze crowns the German Alps with a summit that drains into 3 countries and stitches landscapes together. Do you know that its northern slope shelters the northern Schneeferner, one of the last surviving German glaciers, shrinking yet still shaping the rock beneath? The summit is not just rock and ice, but a living laboratory where meteorologists and glaciologists track climate change in real time. From the Zugspitze plateau, you can step onto hard-packed snow, even in summer, and watch meltwater carve new channels toward the valleys far below. Reach the top via the historic rack railway that tunnels through granite, or by the dramatic Alpes cable car that rises from a turquoise lake. Below, the Alps reflects the jagged silhouette of the peak, linking Alpine heights to the charming timbered towns of Garmisch-Partenkirchen. On clear days, the panorama reads like a map of Europe, jagged ridgelines pointing to Austria, Switzerland, and even the Dolomites in Italy beyond. The Summit Cross, a century-old marker, draws pilgrims of photographers, climbers, and families who share the same thin-air view. In winter, the glaciers and pistes become a high-altitude playground, where skiers glide from glacier ice to gentle Bavarian slopes in one run. Hikers follow ancient routes that thread from alpine huts across limestone ledges down into forested valleys that cradle mountain cheese dairies and hidden springs. Engineers carved cableways and observation platforms into the rock, making what once required days of climbing now accessible in an afternoon. But accessibility has a cost. The retreat of ice and changing snow lines are visible year by year, turning scientific warnings into visible landscapes. Yet Zugspitze still surprises with subterranean caves, wartime tunnels repurposed for weather stations, and spring wildflowers that cling to crevices. Each seasonal shift connects the high summit to the valleys. Melt feeds streams, streams pass through towns, towns preserve stories and recipes born of the mountains. Standing at the edge of Germany's roof, you feel how geology, climate, history, and modern tourism converge in a single horizon. And as we descend from the peak toward the lakes and villages, the next chapter of this Alpine journey begins, where mountain memory meets everyday life. Local guides will show you hidden ridgelines, where marmots whistle and rare alpine orchids bloom in pockets of soil left by retreating ice. The view from the cable car window collapses distance. Towns that seemed remote come into crisp detail, connected by roads that hug the contours the glaciers carved. Seasonal festivals in Garmisch echo the mountain's pulse, from harvest processions in the valleys to mountaineering showpieces on the summit. Every visit to Zugspitze therefore becomes a lesson in connectedness. Geology meeting culture, science meeting folklore, and the high peaks shaping the way people live below. When you step back into the valley, the mountain's influence lingers in the water you drink, the weather you plan for, and the stories that guide the next ascent. Lake Constance, or the Bodensee, is one of the few inland seas in Europe where Germany, Austria, and Switzerland share a single continuous shoreline and a freshwater reservoir that supplies millions. Do you know that Lake Constance, Bodensee, stores so much fresh water and fosters such a mild microclimate that fig trees and vines ripen where the Alps loom near trees? From the flower-packed terraces of Mainau Island to the monastic gardens of Reichenau, plant life here reads like a botanical rare book. Reichenau itself holds a UNESCO-listed medieval monastery whose scribes and gardeners shaped Europe's spiritual and agricultural map centuries ago. Historic towns like Konstanz and Meersburg cling to the shoreline with castles and cobbled streets that remember emperors and fishermen alike. Ferries thread the lake and bike paths encircle it for more than 260 kilometers, turning the shore into a living gallery. You can travel by wheel or foot. Beneath those familiar facades, the lake hides cooler secrets. Powerful thermal layers, sudden sieges, and underwater currents sculpted by the Rhine's entrances and exits. The river that feeds and drains the Bodensee stitches it to the Alps upstream and to the river routes that have carried goods and armies through Europe for millennia. Local vintners coax Spätburgunder and Müller-Thurgau from steep terraces, while fishermen still pull whitefish that have fed lakeside communities since Roman times. On fog-silvered mornings, you can watch mist lift from the water to reveal steeples and vineyards as if painted anew each dawn. The lake's ambiguous maritime borders, the subject of treaties and quiet negotiation, make it a political as well as natural crossroads. And yet, despite maps and markers, the human story here is stitched to shifting water levels, seasonal migrations of birds, and the constant work of conservationists. Stand on the promenade in Lindau, and you can almost feel the pulse of Europe. Languages overlap, recipes merge, and the shoreline becomes a meeting place. That same shoreline leads our journey onward as the Rhine slips away and the landscape climbs toward the dark firs and secret valleys of the Black Forest. As the shore narrows, old water mills and secret coves give way to forests where stories of glassmakers and charcoal burners await. Follow that slope, and the scene will open into another chapter of Germany's landscape, where rivers carve out passages and myths linger in the pines. Perched on a rugged Bavarian hill, Neuschwanstein Castle looks as if it were plucked from a fairy tale and dropped into the Alps. Commissioned by King Ludwig II in the 19th century, it was conceived as a private retreat and homage to the operas of Richard Wagner. Visitors approach along steep trails that reveal postcard panoramas of turrets, shimmering lakes, and forested valleys below. Inside, rooms burst with painted scenes of legends and hunts, with chandeliers and intricate woodwork that blur the line between fantasy and historical design. Yet Neuschwanstein was never finished. Construction stopped abruptly after the king's death, leaving parts of the dream frozen in time. That incomplete quality adds a strange intimacy. You feel the presence of its maker in rooms half realized and views he insisted be preserved. The castle's popularity belies a complicated history of solitude, royal obsession, and the practical challenges of building such a monument in remote terrain. During World War II, the Nazis catalogued art there, and later the site became a symbol of cultural revival and tourism for a changed Europe. From the Marienbrücke vantage, you can measure how the landscape itself played a role in the castle's myth, with sheer drops and mirrored lakes amplifying its romantic silhouette. More than architecture, Neuschwanstein is a narrative device. It tells how imagination, technology and politics collide in a single stone-bound story. For those tracing Bavaria's linked landmarks, the journey continues toward the smaller, intimate palaces of Linderhof and the neighboring village of Hohenschwangau, where echoes of Ludwig's life linger. Follow the valleys south, and the narrative shifts from one royal fantasy to another, revealing how landscapes and rulers shaped each other across generations. Next, we cross to Alpine pine meadows and village festivals. Their crafts and songs reveal Ludwig's human context. Harz National Park shelters one of Europe's last extensive stands of old-growth beech forest, a UNESCO-recognized ecosystem that survived the Ice Age. Do you know Harz National Park's Brocken Peak often sits above a sea of inversion clouds where the Brocken specter and eerie halos form, a phenomenon that baffled scientists and superstition alike. Beneath the mist, ancient fir and spruce stand beside wind-scoured heathlands, creating sudden, almost theatrical shifts in habitat. These abrupt transitions host rare species like the reintroduced lynx, capercaillie, and tiny moonwort ferns that cling to rocky ledges. Rivers such as the Ilse and the Bode carve deep gorges and plunge into waterfalls that glow emerald in sunlight. Follow the Ilse upstream, and the trail will lead you from mossy pools to the ruined castles that once guarded medieval mining roads. The Harz narrow gauge railway still puffs steam through valleys, linking Harzberg hamlets to the timbered streets of Wernigerode and the silver mining town of Goslar. Those towns themselves breathe history. Rammelsberg's mines tell of centuries of ore extraction that shaped the landscape and culture. On spring evenings, the Brocken slopes fill with stories of witches and Walpurgis night, folklore that threads directly into the park's craggy identity. Hike further, and you'll find precious raised bogs, high mountain heath, and craggy tors, where the weather changes as fast as the legends. Conservation here is a quiet revolution. Natural rewilding, controlled forestry, and one of Germany's most extensive lynx monitoring programs. Trails are designed to let visitors cross between microhabitats, so each step reveals a new chapter of geology, biology, and myth. In winter, the park is a silent, snow-sculpted world where the railway's steam breath is the only moving sound. In summer, the meadows explode with orchids and butterflies that connect the high moors to the low forest like living threads. Harz is a place where sequence and superstition collide, where ancient trees keep climate records and mountain winds carry stories. Stay with us, and we'll trace a path from the Brocken's summit, through secret valleys, and into the stone-built towns that carry its legacy today. Discover the hidden glades where rare ferns and ancient beech seedlings hint at forests that may endure centuries more. Come with us beyond the visible trail and learn why Harz is both a refuge for species and a mirror of Germany's geological soul. Königssee in the Berchtesgaden Alps plunges to nearly 190 meters beneath sheer limestone walls, making it one of Germany's deepest and clearest mountain lakes. Do you know Königssee still forbids combustion engines, relying on silent electric boats and an ancient horn call that turns the cliffs into a living echo chamber? Visitors glide across emerald water so clear that submerged boulders and tree trunks appear suspended between ski and stone. The lake's horseshoe shape and narrow passages give it the feel of a private fjord tucked inside the Alps. At the far end, the tiny pilgrimage church of St. Bartholomew rests on a jut of red roofs against white rock, reachable only by boat or by long Alpine trails. Its onion domes and salt-white facade look impossible, as if a miniature town were painted quietly onto the mountain. Locals still perform the echo trumpet at the service landing to demonstrate how a single blast can return as a multi-layered chorus from the cliffs. That same acoustical miracle once helped hunters and shepherds communicate across the valley before modern radios existed. Beneath the surface, the lake holds glacial histories and cold, oxygen-rich water that support rare alpine fish and mosses found nowhere else. Strict conservation rules in Berchtesgaden National Park keep development out and the shoreline virtually untouched. Hiking paths climb to vantage points where you can watch morning mist lift like silk from the water and reveal entire mountain faces. In winter, snow seals the silence, and the lake becomes a mirror of icy blue glass, framed by stark, snowy cliffs. The combination of geological drama, sound phenomena, and human restraint creates a place that feels both primeval and carefully preserved. Within the Bavarian Forest National Park lies one of Europe's last uninterrupted primeval spruce beech woodlands, a contiguous wildland that stretches into the Czech Šumava and forms the continent's largest cross-border forest. Do you know the Bavarian Forest National Park was Germany's first national park, and that its "let nature be nature" policy allowed entire valleys to revert to wilderness, triggering the gradual return of lynx and other predators? Ancient peat bogs and mist-cloaked high plateaus preserve plants found nowhere else in Germany, relics from the ice age that survived here because the forest kept temperatures and moisture stable. Hidden glacial cirques trap rare orchids and insect communities that scientists still catalog, some species newly recorded within the last decade. Walk the silent trails and you'll step across layers of history where former villages were abandoned and nature reclaimed stone foundations and orchards. Rivers that once powered small sawmills now run unregulated, carving new channels and feeding beaver populations that engineer inter-wetland ecosystems. The park's rewilding experiment is visible from the treetops where towering firs and emergent beeches create a multi-layered canopy, a living laboratory for forest ecologists. Conservationists here study how old growth structure influences carbon storage, water retention, and how corridors across the border enable genetic flow for large mammals. By protecting whole processes instead of only species, Bavarian Forest National Park offers a radical blueprint for conservation across Europe. Its lessons are spreading into Šumava and beyond, shaping how nations cooperate over landscapes that belong to no one and everyone at equal. Even the night sky matters here. With low light pollution, nocturnal researchers document bat migrations and the quiet shimmer of the Milky Way above ancient canopy openings. Storylines of rewilding, scientific discovery, and cross-border friendship converge in small ranger huts where Czech and German teams coordinate tracking collars and seed exchanges. For curious travelers, understated trails lead to dramatic revelations. A single decaying trunk can host hundreds of insect species and fungi that rewrite how we measure forest value. Standing beside such a log, you begin to see the forest not as timber, but as a complex community of life stages, each feeding the next. Bavarian Forest National Park quietly challenges our assumptions that wilderness is distant, that humans are separate, and that borders can contain living systems. Follow its rivers east, and the story continues in Šumava, proving that when nature is left to its own devices, the results can be astonishing. resilient, and unexpectedly beautiful. Perched above the Neckar, Heidelberg Castle's red sandstone walls stand as one of Europe's most iconic ruins. Beneath those ruins sits an odd superlative, the Heidelberg Tun, a gigantic 231 726-liter wine cask once used for princely banquets. Inside the castle, the Deutsches Apotheken Museum displays relics of medical history and curious alchemical tools. The buildings themselves are a patchwork of late Gothic towers and bold Renaissance facades, their forms scarred by war and lightning. Those scars record violent centuries, destruction in the 30 Years' War, and the Palatine conflicts left palaces cracked and open. But the ruin created a new appeal, attracting romantic painters and writers who reimagined broken architecture as poetic space. From the terrace, the view stretches. The Altstadt's red roofs, the graceful arches of the old bridge, and the green ribbon of the Neckar. Follow that ribbon, and you quickly reach the stone bridge, where students and professors once crossed on their way to lectures and salons. Across the river, the Philosophenweg climbs, a scholar's path whose benches and gardens frame repeated views of the castle's profile. Together, the castle, bridge, and wall walk form a connected circuit, each place answering the other's story and drawing visitors into a loop of discovery. Many linger at dusk when the ruins catch the last light, and the town below seems to glow with memory. In tucked-away corners, you still find smaller surprises: a carved Renaissance portal, a faded inscription, a cellar that remembers feasts and sieges. Heidelberg Castle is not a single monument, but a layered narrative where architecture, legend, and the river converse across centuries. Walking from its gates toward the old bridge is to carry those stories downstream, curious about what the next bend will show. Rügen Island's towering white chalk cliffs and ancient beech woods create one of Europe's rarest coastal landscapes. Do you know that the famous Kreidefelsen of Jasmund National Park including the Königssee, glow like bone against the Baltic and are visible for miles from the sea. Those cliffs hide a geological archive where centuries of shells and fossilized life appear as the chalk slowly erodes. Small pieces of amber wash ashore here, the island's Baltic treasure, linking visitors to millennia of human and natural history. Beyond the cliffs, ancient beech forests march down to the shoreline, fragments of a primeval woodland, protected by UNESCO designations. Walk their shadowy paths, and you will feel why local myths name these woods a place between worlds. On the southern coast, the Mönchgut Peninsula unfolds with painted fishing cottages, salty meadows, and narrow Baden lagoons teeming with birdlife. These sheltered waters make Rügen a vital migratory stopover for thousands of waterfowl and waders each year. The island's seaside resorts, from elegant Binz with its stilted pier to the pastel villas of Celine, tell a story of 19th century leisure and modern revival. Historic narrow-gauge steam trains and seaside promenades stitch together villages where artisans still craft amber jewelry. To the north, Cape Arcona rises with twin lighthouses and remnants of Slavic fortresses, a windswept stage for coastal legends. From there, ferries slip across to the car-free Isle of Heidelberg, providing a seamless passage into quieter, wild shores. Rügen's geology and culture are inseparable. Chalk for centuries built cliffs and churches, amber funded livelihoods and myths. Yet the island is changing. Sea levels, storms, and tourism shape a fragile balance between preservation and living tradition. In the coming sections, we'll follow the coastal paths, meet the people who tend the forests and beaches, and uncover why Rügen still feels like half-remembered Königssee. You'll learn how a single pebble of amber can connect Baltic fishermen, paleontologists, and poets across centuries. We'll trace a cliffside path toward the island's interior, where rye fields and windmills frame small bays. And we'll reveal a surprising human story: how Rügen's islanders adapted to shifting sands and booming summer crowds. Stay with us as chalk, amber, and beechwood unfold a coastal tale that reshapes what you thought you knew about Germany's shoreline. Rügen is not just scenery, it is living geology, living history, and a secret gateway to the Baltic's quieter islands. Sanssouci Palace perches on a sunlit terraced vineyard overlooking Potsdam, a masterpiece of Rococo architecture. Do not mistake its intimate scale for insignificance. This summer retreat reshaped royal living. Inside, rooms shimmer with gilded mirrors, delicate stucco and hand-painted ceilings that tell Prussian stories. The intimate scale and playful decoration make it feel less like a palace and more like a private salon. Beyond the staterooms, the famous picture gallery houses canvases that once toured Europe with the king. Its long, light-filled corridor was designed to display paintings in changing daylight, a revolutionary idea then. The terraced gardens descend in ordered steps, lined with sculptures, fountains, and fragrant fruit trees. Each terrace frames a view, guiding visitors from formal parterres to the secluded Chinese house and the orangery. Walkways reveal surprising microclimates where Mediterranean plants flourish on North German soil. Olive trees, cypresses, and vines survive here because of the sun-warmed slope and careful landscaping. In the neighboring New Garden, statues and a peaceful lake reflect the Enlightenment ideals that shaped Sanssouci. It is a landscape of ideas as much as beauty, where philosophy and horticulture met under Frederick's eye. Visitors often overlook the small Rococo theater, once hosting private performances for the royal household. Its intimate stage and painted backdrop preserve the domestic pleasures that balanced Frederick's political life. Today, Sanssouci connects seamlessly to the wider cultural map of Potsdam and then to nearby Berlin. From these gardens, the story continues to palaces like Sicilienhof, where global history would later unfold. Guided tours trace the traces of intimate conversations under lime trees and decisive diplomatic meetings. Audio guides reveal hidden motifs like classical references and personal inscriptions that whisper Frederick's tastes. Every stone and statue at Sanssouci seems to bridge private recollection with Prussia's growing public image. As you step toward the palace gates, the path naturally leads to neighboring estates, inviting a longer exploration. Saxon Switzerland National Park contains one of the planet's largest continuous sandstone ridgelines, with pillars and cliffs reaching over 200 meters and ancient sea fossils. Do you know the Baste Bridge sits atop those sea-sculpted rocks, a 19th century walkway straddling natural arches above the Elbe, framing vistas few inland rivers can rival? From the Bastei, the landscape spills into the Neuschwanstein, a maze of jagged ridges and narrow gullies carved by millennia of wind and water. Across the river, the fortress of Königssee crowns a massive table plateau, its ramparts following the same stone that forged the park's towers and centuries of human adaptation. Pfaffenstein holds the Barberine, a rare slender stack that defied erosion and became both a climbing challenge and a cultural symbol. Deep ravines create microclimates where Mediterranean and Alpine plants coexist, producing pockets of biodiversity uncommon in Central Europe. The Elbe's meanders cut an inland canyon whose floodplain forests support migratory birds and secretive mammals like otters along ancient watercourses sources. Hikers follow historic charcoal burner tracks and shepherd paths that thread these landmarks together. So one ridge naturally leads to the next, and local guides amplify the park's layered stories. At night, isolated plateaus yield remarkably dark skies, making the silhouettes of spires and bridges stand out against the Milky Way. Researchers study sandstone weathering here, using models unique to this landscape, turning the park into a living laboratory of erosion and conservation techniques. Seeping springs sculpt Teuphonian caves, sheltering rare mosses, endemic bryophytes and lichens found on few other European rocks. Local folklore stitches the geology to legend, with tales of river spirits and forest guardians that enrich the park's cultural tapestry. Seasonal fog races through narrow passes, revealing and obscuring towers in an hour, changing every visit into a new discovery. Walking from the Bastei to Pfaffenstein and down to the Elbe feels like reading chapters of a single stone-written history. Berchtesgaden National Park harbors one of Europe's last intact high Alpine wildernesses, where glaciers carved sheer peaks and mirror green lakes. Do you know that Lake Königssee is so clear and acoustically precise that boatmen still demonstrate a natural echo against its rock walls? The Watzmann Massif rises above the park as jagged sentinel peaks, sheltering rare alpine plants and isolated moss communities that survived the Ice Age. Meadows of Edelweiss and Gentian punctuate the landscape, offering a living catalog of species found in few other places in Germany. In winter, the mountains reveal their geological history through avalanche-scoured slopes, while in summer, meltwater feeds waterfalls and crystal streams. Ancient spruce forests around these waterways form a research ground for scientists tracking climate-driven shifts in species and tree line movement. Trails lead from the tranquil shores of Königssee to high cirques, where chamois and golden eagles appear as regular residents rather than rare sightings. Nearby cultural sites like the Baroque pilgrimage church and the relics of Obersalzberg connect human stories to the same rugged terrain. Rangers here practice hands-off conservation, allowing natural processes, avalanches, grazing, forest renewal, to shape ecosystems with minimal interference. Their approach makes Berchtesgaden a model of rewilding in Europe and a living classroom for conservationists from across the continent. At dawn, mist lifts from Königssee, and reflections so precise they blur water and cliff create moments of optical magic few landscapes can offer. Those mornings recall centuries of folklore, mountain spirits, monastic pilgrims, and salt miners whose craft linked the peaks to valley towns. Scientists mapping microclimates are still finding insect and plant species confined to single valleys, discoveries that raise the park's global conservation importance. Each trail reveals another secret. From the tidal flats of the Wadden Sea, where migratory birds track their ancient routes across the largest intertidal system on Earth, the story of Germany unfolds in surprising arcs. Follow that rhythm south, through Hamburg's maze of canals and more bridges than Venice, and the city's port echoes the nation's maritime pulse. The Rhine then carries legends and vineyards, past the Lorelei cliffs and medieval towns that stitch together Europe's history. In Cologne, the soaring cathedral guards the relics of the Three Kings, a tangible link between faith, power, and pilgrimage. Turn southwest into the Black Forest, where fairy tale clockmakers and dense firs bend light into stories that inspired Grimm brothers' myths. From there, the landscape opens into Bavaria, where crystalline lakes like Königssee reflect peaks and traditions unchanged by time. At Neuschwanstein, a king's romantic vision became the blueprint for castles and dreams around the world, merging fantasy with limestone and turrets. Beyond it, the Zugspitze pierces the sky, reminding us that Germany's heights are as commanding as its cultural depth. Berlin stitches the chapters together with concrete and creativity, where street art converses with memorials, and the past keeps reshaping the present. Trier whispers of Rome in its stones, proving that layers of human stories lie beneath modern life in every cobbled lane. From seashore to summit, from cathedral to clockmaker, Germany's contrasts are not contradictions, but conversations between land and people, history and reinvention. If you thought you knew Germany, these hidden currents show how much more there is to discover when you follow a river, climb a ridge, or linger in a small town square. Come away with the urge to trace these paths yourself, because every valley hides a secret, and every city keeps a story waiting to be heard. This is not the end of the journey, but the invitation to begin one. Step into Germany's quieter wonders, and let them rewrite what you thought you knew.